What's up everybody, Jason from Jason's Exotic Reptiles. You guys have liked this video series, so we're going to continue it. This one is going to be Boa Constrictor Constrictor versus Boa Constrictor Imperator. This will not be a comparison of how to tell the difference. I have a video on that, and I promise you we will be remaking a new one. This is going to be which one is better, the Boa Constrictor or the Boa Imperator. It's going to be very subjective, so let me know in the comments what you think. But before we dive into it, let's go through the criteria and let's show off this guy. So the criteria for this video, as per usual, is going to be size, temperament, enclosure size/type, care and husbandry, feeding, natural beauty, morphs, cost, ease of breeding, and the ability to create a new market. This guy that I'm holding is a Type 2 Ghost Inca. Inca morph, Type 2 anathoristic, and a hypomelanistic, all in one animal. Only a handful of them in the world. I have most of them, or at least I think I have most of them, to be honest. Not Inca itself, but the Type 2 Ghost Incas. I have probably the large majority of them in my room right here. And this is one, he's actually available on the website as of the time we filmed this video, but I don't think he's going to last long, and honestly, I may keep him back myself. Beautiful snake, and let's dive into the video itself. Which one's better, Boa Constrictor or Boa Imperator? We put that snake back so I can focus on you right now, and the first category is size. Now, size is something that is going to be genetically dependent. I wanted to give this an equal score, that both sizes of BCC and BCI, or BI and BC, are exactly the same. But I have to say that overall, in general, the pure genetics that we have with the BCC or the BCs, the Boa Constrictors, that's going to make a overall larger boa. Now, these boas, both BC and BI, are exactly the same in terms of size. Everything that one will get bigger than the other is kind of backed on rumor and not really backed on facts. I have some giant Nicaraguan boas that are way bigger than my BCC stuff, but I have to say that overall we're going to give this to the Boa Constrictor as opposed to Boa Imperator, mainly because those pure genetics are generally going to give you a larger snake, especially once you start getting into things like the Peruvians and those locales that do tend to grow larger. So this one, in terms of size, needs to go to Boa Constrictor. Category number 2 we're going to go for is temperament. Now, temperament on both of these are really good. Temperament is highly dependent on the animal's genetics and how far it is from wild-caught animals. I could make an argument that the Boa Constrictor is just as calm or just as angry as a Boa Imperator. Same thing with Nicaraguan boas and those Central American, those dwarf species. Generally, those dwarf species tend to be a little bit meaner and angrier overall, just more nervous of an animal, but there's beautiful ones that are fantastic right out of the mom. So I have to give this one as a tie. There really isn't a difference in temperament. It's just every animal is different and every animal is unique. So this one is a tie. The next category is enclosure type/size. This one is something that you almost have to give it equal to both. Although the Boa Constrictor might be a little bit larger, this is a negligible difference, and I have seen just as large of Boa Imperators as Boa Constrictors, so you have to give enclosure type, style, size, all kind of the same category. Have to give this one a tie. To rank one higher than the other or better than the other would be unfair. So enclosure size/type, that is going to be a tie, and we're going to give a check mark to each. Care and husbandry. Now, this is one that you could dispute is equal on both. However, I have to give this one to Boa Imperator. I had to think about this one, and I actually kind of went back and forth with Tom on this one of which one is better. I was going to give this one a check to both because I don't have a problem keeping both. Their care and husbandry for me is exactly the same. However, my room is really constant. A newer keeper might not have a room like this, and overall, Boa Imperator is going to be more user-friendly. It's going to be more forgiving, especially once you get into things like Central Americans and Nicaraguans. Tarahumaras, Sonorans, these come from, well, Sonorans is Boa Sigma, but these come from those more mountainous regions that have larger temperature fluctuations compared to, let's say, a Brazil BCC or Peruvian. So overall, I have to give this check to Boa Imperator. They're just going to be easier, more forgiving, and a hardier animal overall. Category number 5 is feeding. Now, this one was easier for me to make a decision on because although sometimes I've had litters of BCC or Boa Constrictor stuff that took to food right away and ate massive prey right from the start, I've also had the opposite, where Boa Constrictor generally are born with weaker stomachs and they can't handle prey that's as large. So they're a little bit less forgiving in terms of the feeding side. If you push them a little bit faster than you would with a Boa Imperator or a BI, you're going to be dealing with regurgitation issues. So for feeding, I have to give it purely based on starting babies off. It has to go to the Boa Imperator. Boa Imperator gets a check for this one. Category number 6 is natural beauty. Although this is very subjective, I have to give natural beauty to the Boa Constrictor. Generally, their patterns are a little bit more dynamic. They're a little cleaner than, let's say, a Boa Imperator. Now, not always. You have some really pretty Boa Imperators, and we're not talking about morphs. So I know I'm going to get comments down below. It's hard to beat an IMG. It's hard to beat this. It's hard to beat that. We're just talking about pure base form. Which one, overall, if you put two on a table in front of somebody, which one would they say looks better? And I'm going to say the majority of people, in its natural base form, no morph, is going to almost always pick a really pretty Boa Constrictor over a really pretty Boa Imperator. Taking nothing away from a Boa Imperator, I love the way they look, but when you hold the two side by side and we're trying to rate this and which one is better versus worse and which one beats the other one, I have to tip the scales a little bit in the direction of the Boa Constrictor, so Boa Constrictor gets the check mark on this. Category number 7 is probably the easiest category we have here, and this one is morphs. There are no morphs for Boa Constrictor, so there are some albinos and there were some RLTs that started there, but there are no morphs for Boa Constrictor, pure morphs that are readily available, so has to go towards Boa Imperator for this. Boa Imperator wins on morphs, hands down. We don't even need to discuss it anymore. Anybody who disputes that in the comments, I'm going to tell you you're wrong. Category 8, cost. Now, this is a challenging one because there's pros and cons of each. Now, Boa Constrictor generally cost a little bit more for their base morph, but Boa Imperator has a much wider range of costs when you start going into morphs. Because we have to break this down into which one is better in a pro versus con type of video, I have to give the cost to the Boa Imperator, mainly because you can get some really cool animals for $100, $200, and for Boa Constrictor, to look for even a wild-caught Boa Constrictor pure, you're probably looking at $300 to $400. And once you start getting into some of the higher-end lineage and stuff, in some of these locales, they get really expensive. You could be looking at $5,000 to $6,000 for some of these animals. So in terms of cost, I have to give this to Boa Imperator. Category number 9, ease of breeding. Now, I have kept both. I have bred both. I've bred almost every locale out there, and I've bred all different kinds of morphs. I think they're both easy to breed, but they are inherently different. So if I were to say some brand new keeper who wants to breed these snakes, which one is easier, I do think that Boa Constrictor is more difficult to breed than Boa Imperator. It's just most of the information available out there shifts a little bit and it's not readily available. So I'm going to say that this check needs to go to Boa Imperator. It is generally easier to breed than a Boa Constrictor. Check goes to Boa Imperator. The last and final category, category number 10, is ability to create a new market. Now, this is an interesting one and one that I somewhat struggle with because it's how do you create a new market when there's already something out there? There's already locales, there's already morphs. And I wanted to give this to Boa Imperator because there's a lot of different ways you can bring those morphs. But then I thought, well, there's not a lot of Boa Constrictor localities out there that have been bred flushed out enough. So there's ability to do that there. And if a morph pops up, it could be game changing for that locale. Let's talk, Argentine Boas are kind of, I'll use that as an example, but they have the T-positive Argentines. You're not going to create a new market, but you are creating a whole different dynamic within that market. So in terms of BCC or Boa Constrictor, BC versus Boa Imperator, Boa BIs, I have to give this a tie. Now, I want to know in the comments what you guys think. Is this a true tie? Would you give it more to Boa Imperator versus Boa Constrictor? There's fundamentals of both. And I mean, you could argue that creating a new market with Boa Imperator is easier than Boa Constrictor, but you're limited on Boa Constrictor. We have what we have, and you could get your own line, you could get your pedigree of Boas from the wild, but it's really hard to create a new market in both of them because they already have nice established markets. So in terms of creating a new market, I think that's going to be challenging. So I have to give a check to both. With all that said, I think Boa Imperator is the clear winner from this one. Let me know in the comments if you disagree. I want to hear from you. I want to know why you disagree, but you have to rank it on my categories here. You can't go rogue. If you want to see a new category added to these videos, let me know so I can include it. Until next video, let's keep it moving.